glad to hear. My name is Michael. I'm one of the pastors here. We're glad to hear for our summer Blockbusters series. We're looking at the spiritual themes of the summer's hottest movies. And we love this so much. We kind of really get into it. Suzanne knows I love this series too, and so she bought me these, my popcorn socks, just to celebrate. I just thought I'd share that with you right there. Before we get started with the movie for today, if you don't mind, let's take a look at the announcement sheet that you're handed in the door, the Connect card on there. But if you want to just say that you were here, you can text to 256-291-4996. You text welcome if you're new here and you'd like to share some information with us so that we can send you information about the church, keep in contact with you, get to know you. And if you're a regular attender, click here. Am I on? My mic's not on already. How's that? Much more godlike. I like that. All right. If you're a regular attender, just text here. And if you'd like to do pizza with the pastors, we do that the first Sunday of the month normally. We're going to do it the first Sunday of August because this is 4th of July weekend coming up next week, and we won't be able to do it. We won't do it because most people will be out of town. So we're going to skip that and push it on to August, first Sunday of the month. It's a great time to get to know us and for us to get to know each other. So text pizza to that same number. Not steak, not tacos, not sushi, even though I like all of those. All right, if you don't have a smartphone and you haven't done that yet, you can go ahead and just fill out this Connect card, just put information on there you're comfortable sharing. We will talk about that card later in the service because it's got some next steps on there we want to talk about. There's also a sign up in there. We won't misuse your information. We're just glad to hear if you're a guest here today. We have a little gift for you out at the front door, so please just stop by. Pastor Suzanne or I will be out there, and we'd love to hand you this little book on prayer. So now, without any further ado, let's get to our movie.
You stumbled upon an opportunity. I can make you rich. Rich enough to impress a princess.
What would I have to do?
There's a cave of wonders.
Bring me the lamp.
O great one who summons me, I stand by my oath, loyalty to wishes 3.
I'm kidding. Watch this.
Watch out! You done wound me up. You ain't never had a friend like me.
Hey, can you make me a prince?
There is a lot of gray area in make me a prince. I could just make you a prince.
Oh, no.
Y'all see my palace?
You look like a prince on the outside, but I didn't change anything on the inside. Showtime.
No, I'm in charge, okay? I say when it's time. Really? I thought a princess could go anywhere.
Not this princess.
Do you trust me?
Don't you dare close your eyes. Hold your breath, it gets better. I'm like a shooting star. I've come so far. Let me share this whole new world with you.
That's awesome. How many people went to see Aladdin, the new one? How many people remember the one from like 1993, with Robin Williams as the genie? Will Smith is not Robin Williams, but he's not bad either. He plays a really good genie. Actually, it's the remake of that 1993, I think 93, 92. Suzanne remembers the date. 1992 animated thing, and it's a live action one. And so far, this is a blockbuster. It's made like 80-something billion at last count. It's probably more than that by this point. Huh? 810. She's telling me 810 billion. Billion? Billion? Million, okay. Million. Woo! We need that in the national budget. All right, hey, this is a great movie, and one of the things, and you might not think, spiritual themes, blah, blah, with this, but there's a theme that kind of goes through this whole thing. It has all this kind of same cast of characters. There's Aladdin, who's a little kind of thief and gutter snipe, and he just robs things and survives by his wits. And then there's the princess, Jasmine, who's there, who's getting sold off by her father to the highest bidder, to become somebody's queen for political sake. And then, there's Jafar, he's the evil vizier who wants all the power. And then, of course, there's the genie, and you can't miss the genie. And the funny thing about each and every one of these characters in this remake, not necessarily in the animated one, in this remake, all of them have this deep, deep dissatisfaction with who they are. Every last one of them wants to be something different. Hence the wishes and the genie and all that stuff. And the one that surprises me the most, the one that surprises me all of that, is that the genie doesn't want to be the genie. The genie doesn't want to be this purveyor of wishes, doesn't want to be some big cosmic vending machine. The genie kind of fights and pushes back against that. And that's crazy. See, we can identify with the rest of them. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be the person I was born to be. Right? We all understand. We all can identify with that person. Trying to be something that we're trying to break out of the chains that society has placed around us. We get that. We can identify with those characters. But with the genie, it's hard to identify with that. And one of the most powerful creatures in the universe, and all people want you for is what you can give them. Sounds like somebody we know? How many times have we treated God like a cosmic vending machine? Where because of our dissatisfaction with who we are, we cast wishes all the time at God, hoping that we can become something more than we are. Hoping to break out, and hopefully if we're right, if we say the prayer just right, if we do all the right things, maybe, just maybe, God will grant us those wishes, And it's a sad day, I think, not for us, but for God, when our faith devolves into making God into a cosmic vending machine. I think if we really understood God's identity, who God really wants to be seen as, then maybe we wouldn't struggle so much with our own. Well, who can identify with God? Well, frankly, Jesus. Jesus is the only one who can identify with God. Jesus is the one that came to tell us who God really was. In the beginning of the Gospel of John, it says, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. And He came to His own didn't even recognize who He was. It's crazy that God sent a part of Himself, an essential part of Himself, in Jesus to embody who God was to us so that we would finally get it. So who is God to you right now? I mean, if you're just being honest with yourself, who is God to you? It's actually one of your next steps on the thing. Who is God to you? Is God some angry parent up in heaven, mad at us all the time? Is God some guilt-inducing judge who wants to slam down on you? Is God some old white dude with a beard just really wound up the universe and let it go? They're really not all that interested in what happens afterwards. Is God some psycho that unleashes terror on random people? I mean, who's God to you? Who do you think God is? Write that down on that connection card. It's actually one of those next steps. Write that. Just, if you're being honest with you, take a second right now, grab a pen and just write that down. God is blank to me. It might not be anything like that. It might be something good. But who is God to you right now? If you're just being honest with yourself. Well, that's, frankly, a question Jesus asked a lot. And He wanted people to get to know who God was, because God was the essence of Jesus. The Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. And so Jesus asked. He asked His own disciples. They didn't know who He really was. They had some ideas, but they didn't really know. It says, who do people say the Son of Man is? And he's speaking of a term that was used to identify the one who would be sent to us the Messiah, the Christ? And they replied, some say it was John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But he stops him and he looks at him and he says, but what about you? I don't care what everybody else thinks. What do you think? Who do you say I am? And when they hear that word, they hear those two words, I am. It triggers this collective religious memory for any Jew. Because that's the name of God. God, back when he revealed himself to Moses, said, I am who I say I am. And in fact, they didn't even feel they could say the name of God, so they kind of almost turned it into an acronym that they could say out loud because they didn't feel they had the right to say God's name. And it became Jehovah, or Yahweh, to us. And so he's saying, who do you think I am? And I love that he's not going to just lay it on them, who he is. He wants them to figure it out. I want you to figure this out. And with Jesus, the only way to figure it out is to follow him and find out for yourself. You can take somebody else's word for it. And a lot of us start our faith that way. We take somebody else's word for who Jesus is. But Jesus wants you to figure it out on your own. Because when you find out who Jesus is, you're going to find out who God is. Today, we're going to go through a gospel of John. And the beautiful part of the Gospel of John is that when John wrote it, it was at the end of his life. He had spent an entire lifetime following Jesus. And when he wrote his Gospel, he wrote that with Jesus' identity in mind. And he quotes Jesus saying these I am statements all the way throughout his Gospel. And if you read the Gospel of John, you're going to find out to a point who Jesus really is. And Jesus shares these things with us. And that's what we're going to find out today. Because if we can figure out Jesus' identity, maybe we can figure out who God really is and wants to be seen as. First thing Jesus said, he says, I am the bread of life. He says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry again. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty again. And with this statement, he's taken them right back to Moses and their ancestors, being led through the wilderness and God supplying manna, this bread from heaven, this thing that God dropped from the heavens every day for them so that they could eat. He supplied their needs. And when they got sick of it, God said, so what? Suck it up. I'm giving you what you need. See, that's the fun thing about God. He's not going to give you, he's not a cosmic vending machine. He's not going to give you everything you want, but he's going to give you everything you need. I mean, and the last thing any of us that are my age or older need right now is any bread, right? I mean, we are one of the fattest nations. I think we're 17th on the list. Fattest nations in the world. We're obese. We are feeding ourselves. We're not hungry for real bread, right? But this is pointing to a spiritual truth. We're not hungry for any kind of food, but we're starving nonetheless in our souls. We're racked with depression, with loneliness, with guilt, with shame. There's things in our soul that we are so dissatisfied about. Maybe that's what drives us to overeat so much, because we're trying to fill a hole that only Jesus can fill. Only the bread of life can satisfy. Only the bread of life can satisfy. And you can throw wishes up to God all day to try to fill that hole, and God will give you what you need. Might not give you what you want. So here's the question. Are you hungry enough to come to Jesus yet? Are you hungry enough to come to that bread of life? Are you willing to allow God to give you what you need? Not what you want, what you need. Who is Jesus to you? And then Jesus says this, I'm the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you'll have the light that leads to life. We live in such a dark world right now. I watch the news just to see how dark it is. And we have all these because it's political season again, right? Elections are only 2 years away, right? And we have all these politicians claiming that they have the light, up to and including our president, all of them claiming that they have the light, they have the right way, and they're going to lead us into the future, into this glorious future, and make us glorious again, right? They all claim to have it, and we place our faith in these people. And I got to tell you, that's the wrong thing to place your faith in. We don't need another president. We need a king. We don't need to keep placing our faith in people, because let me tell you, they live in the darkness right there with us. They pull their scared little pants up one leg at a time, just like you and me. And maybe, just maybe, if we quit putting our faith in politicians and start putting our faith where it belongs, we would see them for what they are. Of the people, for the people, and by the people. Not some light bearer for our nation. They're a servant for our nation. And maybe, just maybe, we hold them to account for that. We need to put our faith in the right thing. So are you willing to let God's light shine into your life? Are you willing to see yourself? Because that's the scary part, is seeing yourself for what you really are when that light shines in on you. Because we put up a good facade, don't we? But I don't think it's the bad parts of us that we're afraid of. I think it's the glorious parts of us that we're afraid of. Who is Jesus to you? And Jesus said, I'm the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved, and they'll come and go freely and will find good pastures. You know, for so many years the church has preached Jesus as the gate, as the one that closes and keeps people out. But he said, I'm a gate, not a wall, not a fence. I'm a gate. I'm here to let people in, not close people out. That's what gates do by their very function, their very nature. They let people in. He's there to let us in. He's there to break down the wall that separates us from God. He's there to let everyone in. And if we continue to build him as a wall, then we got the wrong God. Because God is a gate. God opens the door for us, for every one of us. And it's not up to us to close that gate on anybody. That's God's choice, not ours. Do you see God as a gate or a fence? I mean, because it changes how you live out your faith. It really does. Who you're willing to be with, who you're willing to associate with. So our God is a God that promotes freedom, safety, one who will meet the needs of the people that he wants in. Who is Jesus to you? It changes how you see God. And then Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. You know, we see God as a lot of things, but good isn't always one of them. He says, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. I mean, we see God as anything but good sometimes. We see God as angry and temperamental and judgmental and hateful, violent sometimes. We see God as anything but good. And Jesus sits here and tells us that God isn't that God. That is not what God is. That's not God's very nature. God's very nature is love. God's very nature is sacrifice. God's very nature wants to guide us the right way, to take us to the better pasture. God's very nature protects his sheep, would lay down his life for his sheep, would sacrifice for his sheep. See, the problem here isn't the nature of God, it's the nature of the sheep. The sheep are the problem. The sheep are strong-willed, self-serving, selfish, brainless sometimes in their desire to get what they want, regardless of what God's saying they need. The sheep are the problem, not God. God's just trying to herd you into something that will become life, and life to the full. Who is Jesus to you? You know, because he says, I'm the resurrection and the life. You know, here's the fun thing about life. It's all going to end. Every last one of you is going to die. I don't care how hard you fight it, how many times you go to Planet Fitness. I don't care how many drugs you take on a weekly basis to keep yourself alive. Every last one of us is going to die. Me included. All of us are going to die. It's how you view that death that's the issue. Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. See, if we view death as a hard stop, it changes everything about how we live this life. If death is it, you're going to live this life a couple of different ways. Trying to get everything you want to get out of this life, living just for yourself to serve your desires, what you want, or you're going to live trying to leave your mark. And guess what? After you die, it might last a generation, if that, maybe a year or two for most of us. And then you're quickly forgotten, and people go back to their life. But what if death isn't a hard stop? What if death is just the beginning of something else? It changes how you live this life. Because all of a sudden, you don't have to live this life meeting your every desire. You don't have to live this life afraid that everybody's going to forget you. You live this life not building your kingdom, but building His. We have an opportunity, a golden opportunity in Christ to live this life, building God's kingdom, making a mark that's eternal. Not something people are going to forget in a couple of years after they spend your inheritance. You have an opportunity to become something that's going to bear fruit for centuries. And we trade it in just so we can get what we can get out of this life when we're still alive. Who is Jesus to you? Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and life. No one can come to the Father except through me. See, Jesus isn't just worried about your eternal destination. He's worried about the right now. And a lot of people find this verse offensive because they want to give a fair shake to all the other ways people have devised to try to get to God. I get that. I understand that. We want to honor people's religious beliefs and how they feel they need to approach God. And you know what? Sooner or later, we're all going to meet God anyway, right? The real question is, do you want to know Him now? Or do you want to be surprised when you meet Him in the future and figure out who He really is? I'd rather get to know Him now in this life and figure out what God wants of me in this life than to be surprised. This is who I really am at the end of my life. And Jesus says, if you follow me, you will know God. I will show you the way. I will show you the truth about God. You know, all of us are going to meet Him one day. You want to know Him now? Who is Jesus to you? And then finally, Jesus says, I'm the vine. I'm the vine, you're the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. You know, there's a part of us that wants success out of life. We want to lead a life that matters. We want to lead a life that has impact. We want to lead a life that leaves a legacy. We want to lead a life that's remembered. But true success, true wealth, as I've heard many times here recently, has very little to do with your balance sheet or your net worth. True wealth is found in the wealth of your connections. I've heard it said. In those who you are connected to. The really rich and the really famous and the people that make the biggest impacts aren't lone geniuses. They're the people that know how to connect with the right folks around them. How much more so if you connected with God? What if you plugged into the creative juices that powered this universe? How much more so that connection than the ones you make here on earth. The ones you make here on earth are important. Don't get me wrong. But if you had your choice, and your goal is to do something that lasts, Jesus is saying, connect to me because I'm connected to God. And if you remain in me, you're going to do things that bear fruit in this world. You can be this little tiny twig somebody broke off and stuck in the ground, and maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't. Or you can be connected to the force that runs this universe and see what God wants to do with you. Who is Jesus to you? So who do you say God is? Who do you say Christ is? Peter answered it. Jesus asked him, he said, what about you? Who do you say I am? And Simon Peter answered, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, you're blessed because my Father in heaven has revealed this to you. You didn't learn it from any human being. You followed me, the way, the truth, and the life. And I showed you who the Father was. God revealed that to you in that following. You know, maybe we wouldn't be so dissatisfied with our own lives and our own identity if we try to figure out who God is. And the way is in Jesus. The way is through Jesus. Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. And He came to that which was His own didn't recognize Him. But you got a chance. So who is Jesus to you? Can I get the band?